This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice. It exists to entertain and to inform. Welcome, everyone. This is For Historians, a podcast misadventuring into the archives of medical history and beyond. This is the show where we dissect a history of medicine topic to learn a little something about how medicine got to be the way that it is today. I'm Dr. Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Dr. Aaron.
Well, what?
You gotta do a different one. You always do that one.
Well, what?
There we go. Excellent. And Dr. Mike.
Hi. Hello there. Oh,
Okay.
hello there.
I have
Ooh, the Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hello
there.
goosebumps for all the wrong reasons. We are without Alba this week since she decided it would be more fun to hang out in the mosquito and tick-infested woods without modern conveniences. You guys probably call it camping instead of hanging out with us. I would rather volunteer for a colonoscopy than go camping. So I'm mildly offended by her absence.
At least you get drugs with a colonoscopy. I guess you might
get
get
beer
drugs
at a
at camping
campsite.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to carry it in though.
I feel like
Yeah, but-
campsites, I feel like if you stumble upon a random campsite, there's a pretty good chance you're going to find drugs too. Not insinuating our Alba would ever, but I feel like most people out in the woods have to do something to try and ignore the fact that they are out in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be like, DMT, you thinking it was DDT. And then,
I mean, that sounds like a terrible place to do. You're just going to end up with a bunch of impaled sticks in your.
probably
Yeah.
ketamine, maybe.
Don't do
I don't know what else
DMT in
you
the
would
woods. Don't do DMT in the woods. Don't do DMT. Probably.
My list,
I don't know.
top 3 things to bring in. Bush Light. If I cannot obtain Bush Light, it would be ketamine. If you can't obtain ketamine, then DMT. Then the 4th would be like a high noon or something like that.
Okay, that's
Right.
a list with a lot of variation.
Reminder to self: don't go camping with Mike.
You'll get arrested.
Look at all the colors.
And they'll find us in 2032.
Before we get on with the show, I'll take a brief moment to mention our Patreon page. If you enjoy what we do here and you'd like to join the PHPod community we are building over there on Patreon, please do check us out at www.patreon.com/forhistorianspodcast to support the show, get access to bonus content, get episodes, and behind-the-scene news early. So, with that, we're going to go to our new segment, our non-medical advice segment. Are you guys ready to give out your best non-medical advice?
Sure. Let's see how
Okay.
this goes.
That was a big inhale.
Hi. Oh, wait.
Since we don't give out medical advice on the show, we'd like to warm up with this segment. Again, we are calling it non-medical advice until we think of a catchier name or just give up trying. This is a segment where we use our medical prowess to address a fan question that has nothing to do with medicine. Is our approach helpful? Debatable at best. All right, so this week's question comes from Prescott, who asks, do you have advice on how to deal with clients or people that believe they know more about your profession than you do?
I mean,
I wonder. I know this doesn't come up much in our profession, so
two
we're gonna
things
have
are
to...
really helpful. One is you can kind of like, so they're talking to you and you sort of move closer and closer as they're talking and you and then when you're within kind of arm's reach, when they say something that makes them seem like they think they're smarter than you just reach out and you just kind of flick them right in the middle of the forehead, just kind of like just a little flick.
Just a little, okay.
And you pretend like it didn't even happen. You just and then wait for them to start again. Then they say it again, and then you just flick them again. Just a little, just not painful.
Have you ever tried like just continuing to get closer and closer until you're just like just right in front of their face?
Hot breath of knowledge on their mouth.
Yeah. And then you give them the mix. You're like, tell me more, and then you just flick them again as soon as they start talking.
See, I do the exact opposite.
You just back away.
I slowly move back, and then I make that blink, 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 blink sound. But then I also blink and have like a really subtle, like Mona Lisa type smile. Like you can't tell if it's a smile.
Can you do
or
it right
not
now?
Smile.
He's doing it. That's actually
That's
pretty
very
good. Honestly, that's amazingly non-committal.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think Prescott, it's important to set roles and boundaries. I'm the expert in whatever my topic is, right? And the person on the other end of the conversation is not. Those are our roles in the transaction. And if I'm giving advice on my area of expertise and I'm met with unwarranted skepticism, I'm open to hearing it. first and foremost, but I'm going to ask for sources to be cited. And then once it's apparent that those sources are either, celebrities, YouTube videos, or Joe Rogan, I like to cultivate an awkward silence and let it sort of descend into the room. I blink slowly to signal calmness like I would normally do to my cats. And then I slowly produce my medical degree from behind my back where I keep it at all times. And I raise it like just into view as the silence continues. And then I have a particular skill where I can back out of a room without breaking eye contact. And so you do that, and then you disappear forever.
That's because you have a Neuralink and a backup camera in the back of your head.
All the wires came loose. And here's the thing. I when I'm doing all that, I am hoping to leave a lingering impression of that moment on that person, hoping for a seed for change, to rational thought and appreciation of evidence over the anecdote type evidence. I'd give that a try. I'd see if that works for you.
You're way more prepared than we were, Max.
Well, yeah, I get the questions ahead of time.
Oh, the last piece of it was that once you're at a distance, for me, at approximately 20 paces, then you start answering their questions, but using Tibetan throat music.
Oh, Tibetan throat singing, yes. It's actually a pretty good approximation.
Yep, that's a good one. I'll just lift my stethoscope off and while they're talking again, without saying a word, just kind of put it on their shoulders.
I defer to you, my king.
I think Prescott can probably take that advice and enrich his life, make it better, and help those around him. All right. Well, anyway, listener, if you out there would like our expert non-medical advice on a topic of your choosing, go ahead and send us a question through the links in our show notes, through our website, or through any of the social media links and email and all that good stuff, and we'll try to enrich your life as well.
I feel like we totally nailed that segment right there.
Oh, totally, completely. Well, no cuts needed.
No workshopping
no editing
at all.
Nope.
It's first time. Totally won't get in trouble.
Now, Mike is going to regale us with a story.
Oh, man. And is it going to be a good one? Ho, ho, ho.
Right.
Golly.
Is it about genitals this week?
No, but I actually, I thought it was going to run short, so I do have an add-on that's not about genitals, but it's more up my alley. This is not up my alley. This is it pained me to not, although I did write the word wiener. So I've got that going for me.
Spoiler alert.
I wasn't sure I was going to do it. So I'm going to do a little bit of a memento type thing. I'm just going to do it as if I always do it. But the title of the thing that I found was actually pretty cool, but that's going to be at the end.
Okay, cool.
So
that way the listener has to stay for the entire episode.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do it as a case, and then it's going to be a very brief case. And I didn't prepare the case. It's going to be all off the cuff.
I thought you paused because you wanted me to acknowledge that that wordplay.
No, what?
It's a briefcase.
Hopefully it suits you.
All my cases are brief.
Mm-hmm. All my briefs have cases. It's a chastity belt. Okay, so
wow.
1939. You're at a women's hospital.
It's a good year for the world.
Yeah. So nothing else was happening at the time. You're reading the newspaper. It's nothing that big. Anyway, so
Poland.
Lady comes in, about to give birth, and is pushing.
Go up to L&D.
Okay, so you go up to L&D, and hey, guess what? You are also the on-call obstetrician.
I am not. Well, the L&D nurses are probably more qualified than me to deliver a baby.
The baby.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you catch the baby. The baby comes out. The baby does not look well.
Oh, no. APGARs of...
Not high. Whatever they
1,
were.
2.
50% of the normal value. I can't
3.
remember the APGAR. Yeah.
The APGAR score was developed by Dr. Virginia APGAR, an anesthesiologist in the 1950s. It's an acronym for a scoring system that uses a newborn's appearance, breathing, and activity level to give a general sense of the baby's immediate health. The higher the score, the healthier the baby appears.
I think you probably can't have an APGAR 0, can you? Does it only go down to...
No, I don't think you can. That's the one thing I recall. Just like a GCS, you can't be below 3.
That's true. Glasgow Coma scale, which is a way that we at the bedside measure someone's consciousness and need for breathing tubes, among other things.
Thank you. I'm going to need a lot of those fillers.
I'm going to
today.
try to be the Elba stand-in, and I'm going to try to do my best. So, okay. So
baby's not looking good.
Did we suction the baby? Do we snork
suction
out
the baby.
The mouth and nose and?
Yeah. Baby's breathing.
Okay.
But it just doesn't look great. Initially looked a little blue.
Okay.
Pinking up a little bit with supplemental oxygen. I don't know how you supply that in 1939.
It's probably bellows.
Yeah.
Bubbling cauldrons of some sort. Yeah. Okay.
Well, first thing you do with you just stimulate the baby, right? It's like rub them with a blanket and stuff. It's actually going to warm them.
Yeah. So you're baby stimulating, suctioning out mucus, oxygenating.
Wait, was this the time when they would hold up babies and spank
Slap
them
on the bottom?
Yeah, there was 3 butt smacks.
That was part of it? Okay.
Yeah. And then the baby got its first cigarette, didn't want to smoke it.
Right. It's probably a lucky strike too.
Yeah, so as the bluish discoloration improved, you noticed that the baby was a little yellow.
Uh-oh.
Or a lot yellow.
A lot yellow?
That's not good.
It's a veritable rainbow.
Yeah, and then as you're looking at the baby more, the baby just looks swollen, puffier than you'd expect a baby.
See, this is why I don't ever like delivering babies, because
do you call the NICU?
They don't exist yet.
The 1939 NICU. Yeah.
NICU nurse.
The Three Stooges
comes down
and
takes over.
So we have we have a puffy, sickly, yellowy baby.
Oh no.
Wow, Mike, this is we're starting off on a nice, uplifting.
Is the baby full term? Is the baby fully grown?
Yeah, full term. Everything seemed fine up until about 28 weeks.
I feel like this is a point in the story we should just be like, and everything worked out for the best. Moving on.
No, mom at about 28 weeks had some abdominal cramping, had a little bit of vaginal bleeding. Didn't really think anything of it.
It's like a pre-antibiotic era, pre-vaccination era.
Yeah, did they check the antibodies in the blood?
They have no way of doing that.
What do you mean they have no way of doing that? They have blood.
They have blood. They could check some antibodies.
Test tubes.
They do?
They have probably no understanding of this topic, but I think I know what we're driving at here.
Mm-hmm.
First question is, ma'am, why did you come to the hospital to deliver your baby? It's 1939.
You're right.
You're right.
Why did you bother me?
I suck at cases. God. It's so unrealistic.
You should have stayed home.
She lived in the hospital.
Oh.
There was a hotel attached to it. It was
motel, Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
All right.
So where are you heading, Max?
We always think about jaundice in babies in a couple of different ways. And one of the ways that we think about it is...
Jaundice. Yellowness, you mean?
Yes, yellowness of the skin. We think about it in terms of timing. When did it happen? Was it there at the beginning, or does it happen after a few days? Because they can kind of point to different processes. And when we think yellowing and jaundice, we think liver issue, but the jaundice comes from bilirubin, which is a breakdown product of old blood cells, or breakdown product of blood cells that can't be made quick enough, or blood cells that are just being torn apart too quickly for other reasons. And I was fishing around with the antibody question because there's a thing that we check now, and I suspect this might be what Mike's driving at. We check blood types in pregnant women to figure out if we have to worry about them developing antibodies that might attack the baby's blood supply by recognizing it as foreign material, because technically it is. And so when I'm thinking, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking we have a blood typing problem here because this baby was jaundiced right at birth.
Can you name the condition that the baby has?
Basically, it's it's an RH blood subtype problem. What's the discrete term for that though?
It's got a bunch of different terms.
Yeah,
this is one of those things. So the reason why I wanted to present it in a case form is to show the challenge that we would have diagnosing it, because it doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's very rare.
Right. So if you back up, we would know, in 1939, I mean, old timey doctors would be like, oh, right. You would know liver versus blood breakdown, right? But then
Yeah.
how would you figure out what it is? Because you guys are gonna have to help me here. I gotta say, the last time I looked up ABORH incompatibility was 10 some is a long time ago, right? So if I remember, there's the blood type and then there's all these other antibodies, and that's where the problem is, right? So there's all these little sticky outy thingies on the cells
Sticky outy thingies.
and the mother's blood recognizes the sticky outy thingies as foreign and therefore attacks the baby's red blood cells, and like that's what you were saying, gets torn apart. But so the mom's immune system is essentially tearing apart the baby's blood cells, essentially, right? Isn't that
correct?
Ish.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess working back from the condition, there's hydrops fatalis, and
that's right. That's
the swelling, and this is erythroblastosis fatalis.
Ooh.
Gotcha.
Or just hemolytic disease of the fetus.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So hydrops is what? I mean, that's like basically that's
swelling.
Yeah. So you can have hydrops of lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
You can. Yep.
Yeah. So that's why a baby looked swollen, because it will kind of go through some of the physiology, not the fun. It will just kind of like.
Well, and you dropped a few other terms. So what were some of the other terms? So let's go. Hydrops is swelling. Fetalis, referring to a fetus.
So in 1939, they didn't know this. They were doing blood transfusions. They knew that there were reactions and new blood types, but then sometimes people would have transfusion reactions and they didn't know why. So they ultimately, I guess we could just kind of go at it now, but there's these docs. There's a Philip Levine and Rufus Stetson. He also made these really cool hats.
Great name.
Rufus Stetson was the name of the doctor?
Yeah. So in 1939,
oh my God, that is so great.
Yeah, so they published a case where this is kind of funny, but so it's not funny. But yeah, so in 1939, there was a case report. A child was stillborn and had died of hemolytic disease of the newborn. So there, this erythroblastosis fatalis or whatever. Or
which break those words apart real quick, because
it's again, we'll get into it. But what happens is that mom's immune system attacks baby's blood cells.
Well, right. So but what those words actually mean, just so I think it'll help the listener.
Erythro red blood cell blastosis. Typically, that'll be like increase from the system.
Meaning, blast cells are immature cells that come from the bone marrow. So these are like cells that will be destined to become red blood cells, but they're very what's the word? They're just like underdeveloped. Yeah, they're immature. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah. So you're getting a lot of immature red blood cells in the bloodstream, and that's the erythroblastosis. So there's too many of them, and it's unusual to have so many. You'll have a few, but it's unusual that the bone marrow is trying to kick out so many of these underdeveloped cells that are supposed to become fully fledged red blood cells.
Yeah, and this was a thing. It was just like some babies had this, and it was just a thing. And about 50,000 babies every year died from this. 10 to 50.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And it was just like, well, that's just a complication of childbirth. They would just say like, this is a stillbirth. They would say that they know why. They know the condition, but they didn't know really why
it happened
until this case. So in 1939, child is stillborn. The mom lost a lot of blood during the delivery. Both the parents had type O blood, so they used the husband's blood to transfuse the wife, and she had a transfusion reaction. So then these guys thought like there must be something else in the blood that these things are reacting to. They ultimately found the rhesus factor, the RH.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the RH. I don't know why I couldn't remember it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Because it's one of those things where it's like RhoGAM, and we'll talk about that later, which is a medicine that helps combat this. But,
help us not run into this almost ever.
Yeah, almost ever, truly. So yeah, these doctors, Carl Landsteiner and Alexander Wiener, discovered the rhesus blood type.
You delivered that very maturely, actually.
What happened to Stetson?
Stetson and Levine identified the problem. They identified that there's something else. So these guys discovered the rhesus antigen on the blood cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said antigen. Yeah. Let's see, what's an antigen again? It's that's where I said sticky outy thing, right? So
it's sticky outy thing, a thing that
the protein identifier on the outside of the cell.
Yeah, it's an antigen is a protein that the immune system will recognize and react to. So an antigen, it doesn't always have to be a bad reaction. Actually, sometimes it's an appropriate reaction, but it can be a protein from a virus. An antigen can also be a dollop of pollen or something like that. And so it's a protein, which is a sticky outy thing that the other sticky outy things on the white blood cells will grab onto and then have some sort of response to.
Yeah, the Y grabbies get the sticky outy thing.
They do look like
I
little
did very
Y
well in
grabbies.
immunology.
Mhm.
Yeah, Y grabby.
I didn't
gets the
either.
sticky outy
I got
thing.
the book over there. It's pristine. I don't think it's even got a.
Yeah.
If you
a bend
open
in the
that book,
cover.
does the spine crack?
Yeah, it's. I could probably sell it today for a new book.
Right.
What happens typically, if you're pregnant, baby's in there, there will be some mixing of maternal and fetal blood. It's just, it's unavoidable, but it's usually not a problem. So typically, if you've got a Rh negative mother and then a fetus that's Rh positive,
These are both blood type terms.
the blood, yeah. So this is it's either, present or not present, negative or positive.
So when you hear A positive or A negative blood type or B positive or B negative blood type, the negative is what we're talking about, the rhesus factor.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, with that mixing of the blood, it's not enough to create like a strong reaction. So it'll be some antibodies that get created, but not a ton. Typically, you're going to need to have some thing. So this is almost never the first baby. You have your first baby, you have no problems typically because there'll be some mixing of blood, not a lot. But then when you deliver, when the uterus or when the placenta separates from the uterus, there's a lot of blood exchange there. And that's when mom's blood sees Rh positive blood, develops antibodies. So now the next pregnancy is at risk.
During that first birth. Yeah.
Yeah, because now she has antibodies to a potential fetus. And, you'd assume it would be the same father. So that same father would have the same genetic makeup of his red cells. And
right.
But it depends, because you could be, it could be a dominant trait. You could be homozygous or heterozygous. So you could have a very high risk of passing this on or a lesser risk, like a 50% risk.
And you're referring to how you get an A blood type or a B blood type, or actually how you get a positive or negative rhesus factor.
Correct.
And so it's harder, if I remember it correctly, it's harder to get the negative rhesus factor because I think the positive is dominant. Am I remembering that correctly?
And that makes sense too with the numbers as well. You'd think about if it's 10 to 50,000 births every or deaths from this condition every year leading up to medical advancements, you'd think the numbers would be flipped.
Mm-hmm.
If it was more positive or more common to be negative, you'd think that you'd have way more deaths.
And can I give there's a sort of an analogy when it comes to these kind of immune things that I like to give. I had a friend once call me and say, I was stung by a bee. I'm really worried I could get anaphylaxis. It's the first time I've ever been stung by a bee. And so I said, cool, you're not going to get anaphylaxis. And he said, well, how do you know? I was like, well, truly, if you've never been stung by a bee before, you cannot have anaphylaxis on the first sting. And the reason is a similar principle here, because the first time you're ever stung by a bee, that bee venom gets into your bloodstream, and bee venom's a very potent antigen. So it gets into your bloodstream, your immune cells, they see the sticky outy protein of the venom and they grab onto it. And in folks who do not have anaphylaxis, they're just like, those white blood cells are saying, okay, that's a foreign protein, whatever, everybody just relax. In folks who will develop anaphylaxis, which is an overwhelming reaction, allergic reaction that can be dangerous, life-threatening, all that sort of thing, to bee venom, the first time you were stung by the bee, your white blood cell grabs that little antigen and then sets about a cascade of chemicals that make an army of white blood cells that are going to go bonkers once they see that venom again in the future. But it takes time to make those. It takes months to make all those white blood cells, and they'll sit dormant until you're stung by a bee in the future, at which point they all pounce. They all release all of their, what we call cytokines or intracellular substances out. Blood pressure falls, you get the rash, you get all the bad stuff that comes with anaphylaxis. But it happens after a period of time when you can develop all the white blood cells that will become part of that reaction. It will not happen on the first time because you need time to develop the machinery that makes that overwhelming immune response. And the same thing happens here in birth, because you said the first pregnancy, that you get that intermixing of blood when the baby is delivered. By the time 9 months passes, or as soon as one could become pregnant again, or further in the future, of course, now the immune system is primed to look out for the baby's blood type if they should meet again during the pregnancy, which, as you mentioned, happens in little ways, little degrees, not as much as at birth, but that's how
Yeah,
you
and
set it up in the future.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention too, it's the type of, I guess, a type of immune cell that's doing it. So the acute phase, the acute reaction is going to be IgM. It's just a
immunoglobulin M.
Yeah, so that doesn't cross the placenta, but IgG, so kind of that memory antibody does cross the placenta. So that's the other reason why it's that first one's safe, the second one's not. Yeah, so what happens is that when let's say now this baby is second baby, so you're breaking down fetal red blood cells because the mom's immune system doesn't like those, and so the baby then is realizing, like, I need more red blood cells, so I'm going to pump out a bunch of new red blood cells. And apparently it comes from primarily the liver and the spleen. These erythroblasts, so they pump those out. But what happens is that causes portal hypertension because you're taxing, so higher pressures near the liver.
That's the portal. The portal part's referring to liver circulation, and
so then so the liver is concentrating on pumping out red blood cells, but it's not making the other things like albumin and things that it needs to not be a super swelly mess.
Yeah, and albumin's a protein that helps you not be a super swelly mess.
Not being a super swelly mess is what your liver does for you.
So yeah, it causes leaky membranes. That's the hydrops fatalis. That's, you get swollen everywhere, even in the brain. You will get this high output cardiac failure. So the blood counts are low. We need to oxygenate and ventilate our cells. So then, the heart's going to be working in overtime, and typically, like, kids are going to have circulatory issues, but usually not in utero, because the mom's circulatory system is kind of like compensating for them. So the second they get delivered, that's when you see these, usually stillborn, but sometimes, would die shortly after birth.
It seems crazy to think that the maternal blood supply would attack, your offspring's blood supply, but these are proteins, and when things mismatch, they mismatch. There's these corners of nature are they're kind of cruel, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it's not a guarantee either. So only about 50% of Rh positive infants will have some sort of, 50% will have no symptoms at all. There'd be no reaction, no nothing. 20% are severely affected.
Don't like those odds.
Yeah, it's not
That's
great.
a high percentage, yeah.
It is.
So this was what? Stetson, Wiener, and Levine? How did they?
Levine and Stetson, they're the ones that did the blood transfusion after, and I guess that was just, you got a built-in blood bank sitting next to you in the room, you might as well just use it. Yeah, I'm not sure, I didn't go into the weeds about how they isolated the rhesus factor.
How many Erlenmeyer flasks do they use, Mike?
69.
Nice.
I did write postulated, and I didn't say it.
Bunsen burners?
They had 3 Bunsen burners.
There's a shop here in town, and I think it's other places too, but American Science Surplus. We're not sponsored by them. It's just a really cool place. And have you guys ever been there?
No.
I feel like I have. I have.
It's an amazing store that just has the weirdest stuff. Like, they buy in bulk all these things, like made for TV things, and they just like shove them off to the side. But they're a science surplus store, so they have microscopes and stuff, but they will have entire chemistry glassware kits, so you can just, like, entire, round bottom flasks, Erlenmeyers. They have, magnetic stirrers, anything you want to do to set up the type of science scene from a 1940s movie where you just have bubbling liquids. You can do it all. And it's always, I go in there and I look, and I'm just like, I kind of want a reason to have these things that's not illicit. Like, I don't know. I know almost nothing about chemistry. Well, I know. And I actually have an Erlenmeyer flask I bought there, which I use to refill my coffee machine. Nice. So I have a little bit, but I think glassware is really cool. I kind of want a display in my house where it's just like bubbling liquids, so it looks like I'm just sciencing really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably figure
I think
it
you
out.
should.
You totally should.
Leave the Bunsen burners on, though. They got to do something else.
Yeah, I'm sure you can get an app.
A hot plate?
Yeah. Just think about how unsafe our high school chemistry labs were.
Oh my gosh.
About it. You got like all these natural gas ports. Yeah, open flames, natural gas. Every single table has at least 4 gas ports.
Teenage dudes, especially.
Yep.
Yeah. No, yeah. looking back on it, I wonder, I don't know, do they still do that stuff? They still let
They
kids
must.
play with Bunsen burners? I don't know why
Yeah,
they let
probably.
us. I mean, I remember the first experiment that we did in high school, and it was you take the wood and you like put it in the glass in the test tube and you heat it and capture the vapor off of it, which is basically methanol. And I look back on it, like we're making the
What
blind
alcohol?
you alcohol out
Nice.
If it
of.
was wormwood, you could make absinthe.
Well, I mean, not with the methanol though. But I look back on it because, like, what do dumbass teenage students do? Like, oh, I made alcohol. I'm going to drink it, which wasn't a lot, but it's just don't.
Nobody did that. Did
What's
somebody do that?
no, nobody drank it. I'm just saying the
Yeah.
risk seems
Like
to
it
have been
could.
there. You could, yeah.
Is
I
that
don't
why they? I mean, methanol can cause blindness,
right?
and I wonder if that's why they say that is for ninth grade science class.
You think they're lying
when you-
to?
to make sure that nobody drinks the methanol.
I think methanol does cause blindness. So I'm very sure it does.
Yes, I'm a methanol truther.
You say it doesn't.
I think it's big alcohol. It's big
Big
ethanol.
ethanol is telling us that the other alcohols make you blind.
Seriously, don't drink methanol. It's bad, really bad.
Yeah.
So typically, yeah, with this, you're going to need a sensitizing event in order for this to happen as well. So that's probably why 50%. So during that next birth, so bleeding of some sort, any risk that there could have been a higher maternal fetal blood
Gotcha.
mixing. They said like amniocentesis, trauma,
Which is
it's where they draw fluid off from within the placenta.
yeah. So the baby's in the placenta, or the baby's encased in the water bag, as we'll say, and then it's amniotic fluid surrounding them, and you go in
Through the abdomen, I think.
but you draw out that amniotic fluid.
All right. So then, with all the stuff that Levine, Stetson, Landsteiner, and Wiener, and there are others too, they came up with the anti-RhD immunoglobulin. So RhoGAM is how we know it. It was approved in 1968, and they gave about 500,000 doses. I think from 68. It was either within 68 or from 68 to 73. But it was thought that about 50,000 babies were saved because again, it kills anywhere from they're averaging about 10,000 babies per year in the U.S. and it's a condition that we hopefully will never see because you're going to have the treatment. But
that's assuming you've had prenatal care, of course.
Right. Before RhoGAM, Rh disease or this condition with whatever severity was about 16% of births. So it was actually fairly common.
That's
super common. Yeah. Jeez.
And so it had gone down to 0.1%.
Yeah. Wow.
So it still exists, but nowhere in the numbers. And that was just U.S. numbers. In the world, I'm sure you have to
you have to have somebody type your blood, and then you have to have the availability of this product to give.
This is why whenever we have a pregnant patient, we always ask, we always try to find a blood type. If we don't have one in the system, we try to take one so that it can be used because we need to know if that Rh negative. If you
even if it's just checking the
blood
RH,
type negative, we need to know because it will change a lot of what we do. Do you talk about how RhoGAM works?
Yeah, so it's extracted from human plasma. So they've been working. I don't know. There's a couple companies I think that have synthesized monoclonal antibodies, but RhoGAM, that specific medicine is extracted from human plasma. So it's interesting. So there's a lot of different ways to get it. Some people just have high levels of circulating anti-RH,
sure.
immunoglobulin or whatever. And so those are the best people, but you can get it if somebody's somebody might have to correct me on this, but if somebody's Rh negative and you are injected with Rh positive antigen, you'll create anti-Rh antibodies, and then they draw your blood to get it. So it can be manufactured in a human, but a lot of people have, well, not a lot of people have, a small number of people have really high circulating antibody levels.
Right. And this RhoGAM, as I understand it, it basically binds up all the grabby parts of the white blood cells that will that could find the fetal red blood cells and then trigger attack and break apart of those cells. And the RhoGAM is there to absorb and just prevent that connection from happening on a very small biochemical level. Is that how it works?
Yeah, before it happens. Yeah. So it used to be that, let's say baby was born, it looks like they have this, they would do an exchange transfusion. So they would take all the baby's blood out and put all brand new blood in, which I don't know that it worked that well.
That sounds risky. Is that risky?
It's risky.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason why this whole thing came up is that I was just like scrolling for ideas for the show. And so I came up,
about
there's
10
this
minutes
guy
before
named,
we started.
No. This was days ago.
Okay, nice.
James Harrison. So he's an Australian. You probably never heard his name.
Isn't he one of the Beatles?
Yes. I think you're George.
Well, just like yesterday, was it, or 2 days ago, Aaron, when I said that guy's name. It's like, he played in the NFL. No, he didn't, you knucklehead.
Stanley Morrison, the lead singer of the Windows.
So yeah, James Harrison. They called him the man with the golden arm. So that was like the thing. The man with the golden arm.
He's an arm wrestling
That's the article
champion.
that I first. What's that?
He's an arm wrestling champion?
No, and it's his right arm. So James Harrison apparently has like insane levels of anti-RH antibodies circulating in his blood. So when he was 14, he had major chest surgery. It sounds like he had a trauma, had to have, I believe it was a lung removed, and required tons of blood and transfusions. So after he, survived, and he was just like, I'm going to pay it forward because like my life was saved because people donated blood. So I'm going to make sure that I go and do that. So he started donating blood. And then it turns out that they found that he's got these really high levels of antibodies in his system. So then he started donating every 3 weeks, and he did that for 60 years.
Wow.
So he donated
a lot of cookies and and orange juice.
Yeah, 1,173 plasma donations from this guy.
That's a lot.
He's responsible for every single dose of. They didn't call it RhoGAM, so they called it anti-D, or anti-RH.
Basically, it was RhoGAM.
Yeah, every dose that was administered in Australia came from him, which is insane. And they said that he's responsible for saving 2.4 million babies over the course of 60 years.
Wow,
which is also crazy.
Insane.
I was gonna say that's kind of a rare flex.
What are you doing with your life? Is
right? And he just
cultivating
kept going.
A mustache.
What am I doing?
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So he, there are apparently in Australia, there's anywhere between 50 and 200 people that have similar types of like blood profiles like he does. And apparently it's a law, or it's a regulation that people can't donate after age 81. So in 2018, this is when the story started coming out, when like he donated his last, dose of plasma. It was 2018, so he can't donate anymore. But yeah, he had a bunch of awards from Australia just because it's a pretty cool thing to have done.
Super cool, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's a crazy amount of commitment, right?
And it's nice because it's plasma, because you can donate. Yeah, that you could donate that more frequently than blood. And they interviewed him and they talked to him about being a hero. And he's like, they give me a cup of coffee and something to nibble on, and then I just go on my way. No problem, no hardship. So pretty like humble guy too.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, so the whole story started with seeing that headline, reading his story, feeling that was kind of compelling.
Yeah.
Completely forgetting all this stuff about RH factors and all that stuff. We give RhoGAM, right? But it's like...
Well, in our defense, I mean, this is why you have... I mean, the people who run, even the people, like a blood bank doctor is like a subspecialty. I mean, this is...
I know, we have one that listens to our show.
Yeah, I mean, so let's be real. I mean, it's complex enough.
Oh, they're not going to be very happy with me.
He'll be like, let me correct a few things. First of all, thank you for covering. Yeah, no.
Why
I mean,
does he have that
this
accent?
is a subspecialty. I don't know.
No, the blood bank, they're usually not in the basement. Those would be the pathologists. The blood banks, they get the nice, like, they get their own center usually.
Right, because it's so complex and there's so many different things you have to do with it. And yeah, no, I mean, so it's complex, and the immune system and such, and blood. Hematology is it's a very complex specialty to begin with, and then this is like a subtype of that. So, should give them their props for this tremendous public service of maintaining these products.
Did you guys do the thing in medical school where you figured out your own blood type?
Yeah, but I've forgotten.
Yeah.
I still don't. I don't know my own blood type. Bad
that was
doctor.
like that was one of the coolest lab days in medical school. We stabbed each other for blood, as you do.
Mhm.
And I wonder if I wonder if the person that was my partner remembers that day as humorously as I do. I don't know if he listens to this, but it was his first blood draw, not my first, because I had jobs in clinics and stuff and drew blood. And when he was coming at my arm with the needle doing oscillations, as he was trembling, because it's
like,
hard to
okay.
He was
it's a
just going to
little-
phase through the vein.
and I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. But he got the blood after some redirection, a couple attempts, and hey, but we put it out on a we put it out on a plate, like a slide, and then we added the reagent to see what the clumping would be, and depending on what it was, that's how I found out my blood type. And I just remember thinking that's cool. It's just like, which of these substances makes the blood blob that's your blood type. I don't know. I got a kick out of that. I like the
No, it's
you
cool.
do so many
don't remember
science
that.
experiments, along the way when you're working to get into medical school, and you're just like, okay, organic chemistry was just a series of me mediocrely failing experiments and retrieving some credit for figuring out how I messed it up. Like, that was always the
Mhm.
if you figure
that
out how
saved me
you
so
messed
many
up this
times,
experiment,
right? You do the lab. They're like, all right, can you find your own error? Then you get credit. And you're like, oh, thank God. Look at yours work.
But at the end of this one, I was like, I know my blood type. Awesome.
Yeah. No,
I feel like
that was
everybody in medical school is just B negative.
That's amazing. I didn't realize it was that. I mean, obviously it's that big a problem, but like, it's one of those things that before they had this figured out, I mean, whatever babies had this, they just died. That's very sad.
Well, and then every time I think I know about every antibody, they find new ones. And so like, you'll run into a situation where you have a patient who needs blood, and they keep delaying the blood, and you're like, why are you delaying it? And like, well, we just keep finding all these antibodies that are trying, because it's not just the RH. There are other types of antibodies that can
there
come
are
up
others,
with.
right?
Yep.
There are tons.
So that's why we have whole specialists that are devoted to this sort of thing, because you don't want to mess that up, and you don't want to let your poor ER doc mess that up if you didn't check every one of these antibodies. And typically when you find some to other non-RH issues, they find a lot more, and you're like, this person's blood is so angry.
Yeah, but they I feel like they always find suitable blood.
They do. It's amazing, but they seem to.
Yeah.
Well, we can say some other dumb stuff. Maybe the blood bank listener will write in. But my impression is like the blood type and the positive, negative, those are the major ones, and all these other minor antibody reactions are, well, they're just as severe, but more rare. So I don't know.
More rare, I think.
I think they're more rare, and I think I'm on a limb too a little bit, but I think they matter more in special situations, like if you have an autoimmune hemolytic anemia, which is where your own body for some reason starts attacking your blood cells. Like, once you start trying to transfuse that blood, it becomes really tricky because your body's already attacking blood cells, so you've got to try to find a type of blood that matches in that
but also won't get attacked.
And it's so that's like one situation where I think these minor antibodies really do matter. And of course they also matter in transfusions, because all those little sticky outy things, the antigens and proteins of the cells of whatever organ, they have to be blood compatible. And there's a lot more to it, but that's a nice general understanding that antibodies in the body and compatibility, it's tricky, and there is a whole science and specialty devoted to it for that reason.
So that is a story of James Harrison, the man with the golden arm. He only donated 10 times from his left arm.
So it is the right arm was the one.
It was the golden arm. Yep.
Did he have roly veins, do you think, or were they like just big?
They
old
didn't
juicy...
mention the roly vein. I would assume that he did. If he was going to do that regularly, there had to be a challenge somewhere.
Some pipes.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be a challenge. I think it's like you need the ultrasound IV.
You think so?
Because he donates
that
so
many
much.
times, right? Because each time you access the vein, there'd be a little scar tissue. So I wonder if it was the same nurse each time.
For 60 years, probably. Crotchety old nurse at the end.
Like, go get Dorothy. She'll do it.
Oh, Jim, you're here again.
Well, cool. Did you say you had an accessory, something to add?
I do, yeah. I'm just going to cap it off with something that is a little bit more in my wheelhouse. You could tell that I was a little uncomfortable with
Fine.
I think we all were. That's
kind
okay.
story, like a very positive story. But so there's this study that I read years ago that I have quoted you guys know me, I'm not a study quoter, and I didn't actually know the study. I just knew the online article that I read.
So you're
And
going to quote an article about a story about a study that
in
would
2014, there was a study out of the University of Exeter that was published in the MedChem.com journal. And the title of the study was The Synthesis and Functional Evaluation of a Mitochondria-Targeted Hydrogen Sulfide Donor.
Oh,
This
geez.
is your wheelhouse? That's your wheelhouse? Okay.
Just wait. So essentially the thought of the study, they provided this like a hydrogen sulfide analog to cells, and they noticed that mitochondria were less likely to die. So they were suggesting that this would either help prevent cell death or would prolong cell life. So that's what the study said. It was specifically about mitochondria. So then the headline on the internet was, and do you guys know hydrogen sulfide, like what that smells like?
Eggs.
Rotten eggs.
Yeah,
right?
eggs are like a fart.
Or sulfur.
Yes. So the headlines were, scientists say sniffing farts could prevent cancer, and smelling flatulence could help you live longer, scientists claim. And so I read this article, and then for a while there, like every time I would fart, I would be like, hey, listen, I'm doing you a public service. Like, take a big whiff. I'm going to help prevent you from getting ill. So they would say that, yeah.
Is that how you end up in HR offices so often?
Yeah, from this study, and the authors like absolutely did not back this up. They're like, no, nowhere in this did we say any of this.
Yeah.
But it just said it's hydrogen sulfide gas has the potential to combat heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, dementia, and aging because it protects mitochondria from damage.
Okay, let's.
Yeah. So again, I like that study because I've even said, I think it was just like last week, somebody farted at work and it smelled. I was like, well, at least you're not going to get sick and you're not going to age or get dementia. But then, there's this, for some reason, there was this anesthesiologist that each one of these articles talked to. And like, you could tell he's just delivering this deadpan. He's like, this is an absolute waste of my time. Almost like, don't even put my name on these articles. But he just writes, a takeaway from this article is none of this research says you should go and inhale farts. That was his commentary.
That guy goes through all this training, from pre-med, medical school. You've already got 8 years at least ish of training at that point, and then he specializes in anesthesia. His job is to take care of people through surgery and like all the appreciation for the deep physiology that it takes to run the machine and put people to sleep and wake them up. And he has that moment where he has to comment on this, and he's so sad inside that like
on farts.
He's like, don't sniff farts for health reasons.
I don't suggest pulling that out every time you fart, but if it's especially stinky and then people seem like they're a little disgusted or put off because of how malodorous it is, then I think you should say, listen, there's a study out of the University of Exeter published in 2014 that would suggest that there could be health benefits to taking a nice deep breath right now through your nose.
You could just say you're welcome. Leave it at that. You know what you should do? Welcome. You should just carry the study with you and then like do it and then drop it at the desk.
Fan?
Yeah, exactly.
And then
give it to him. I'm like, there you go. You're welcome.
So lighting your farts is actually really mean to your friends.
It is, because you're removing the health benefits because you're just combusting it.
Then and that actually turns it into a carcinogen because they probably breathe the
breathe your butt. Burnt butt hairs.
Can I say I'm amazed that we are where we are in this episode right now?
Yeah.
But I'm
James
not mad
Harrison,
about
huzzah!
Light your farts on fire. We'll add that to his legacy for sure.
No, don't light your farts on fire.
Your farts. Sorry, I mixed messaging.
Is that medical advice? I don't know if that's medical advice, but I don't know. I'll choose whether to leave it in eventually.
Quick question. Have you guys ever lit your farts on fire?
No.
Personally,
you've never.
No.
Really?
I have not. No, I've seen it. It's pretty.
I haven't either.
You don't have to answer that. I think we know.
Just make sure you're wearing jeans, because otherwise you blow the flame out.
That about does it. Since Elba's, I'm afraid to ask this now. Since Elba's, I really should have. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, Mike
Alba, come
collects
back.
himself.
Come back.
Since Alba's not here to ask about the most poignant take-home message from today's episode,
Poignant.
I wrote this before you said any of the
Pungent.
stuff you said in the last 5 minutes, by the way. I'll ask you, Mike, what's the most important take-home message from today's tale?
Sniffing farts can cure cancer.
Okay. We appreciate everyone listening. We love to hear from all of you out there. If you'd like to check out our merchandise or provide
We'd love
feedback,
to hear from you. Yes.
we can be reached through our website, www.poorhistorianspod.com. There you can send us messages and find links to our social media sites.
Max
Don't
is
smell
smiling
your
while he's
don't
reading
smell
this.
your farts while you're for health reasons. We do work to respond to all posts on those accounts. So if you're looking for a way to contribute to the show, get some bonus content, be a special part of the House of Medical History, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/poorhistorianspodcast. Gain a second wind.
Yeah.
You like that? Mine was
good,
classy.
Max.
That was
A free
good.
way to support us is to tell a friend about us or go and leave us a nice 5-star review on Spotify, iTunes, or whichever platform you choose. And if you're a gamer, just want to hang out with me, check me out on my Twitch channel via the link in the show notes. Till next time, the Poor Historians are signing out. AMA. Don't like farts and party. Thanks.
I could hear you squinting.
You can't hear my tensor tympani muscles. They're mine. All right, this is episode
your own.
85.
You can hear your own tensor tympani, but you can't hear your friends.
No, I can actually hear Mike's. Right? Do it
Wait,
real
here.
quick, Mike. Yeah, see? You can't hear that? It's probably just my young ears.
Now I got earwax all over my microphone.
I do have presbycusis, so
I don't know what that
presbyopia,
is. Okay.
presbycephalgia.
This podcast is for informational purposes only.